He needed a wife by midnight or lose his $2.4 billion inheritance. She was barefoot, hungry, and selling oranges on the street. One deal changed both their lives, but nothing about it was ever meant to be real. It was 10:37 p.m. in the bustling heart of Lagos. The streets were still alive, filled with car horns, beggars, hustlers, and dreams too cheap to matter. She was one of them. Amira, 21, barefoot, covered in dust, and selling oranges near a luxury hotel she couldn't even enter. Her mother was dead, her father, missing. She survived by fighting for scraps and sleeping on cardboard behind a bakery. And yet, tonight, fate was about to rewrite her story. Because inside that hotel, on the top floor, pacing in an all-black designer suit, was Zaid Al-Mahdi, Arab oil billionaire, CEO of Al-Mahdi Holdings, and a man moments away from losing everything his late mother built. His problem? His mother's will stated clearly, if Zaid is not married by his 33rd birthday, her company, worth billions, would be dissolved and its assets sold to charity. And tonight was his 33rd birthday. His advisors had begged him to marry a model, a socialite, a princess. But Zaid? He was done with love. His wife and only son had died in a bombing 2 years ago. Since then, he'd become ice, cold, efficient, and unreachable. So he gave his assistant an order: find me a woman. Any woman. I'll pay her to marry me. 1-year contract. She leaves when it's done. And that's how Amira, the barefoot girl selling oranges by a gutter, ended up being dragged into a marble elevator at 11:02 p.m. Are you arresting me? She gasped as the guards escorted her to the penthouse. No, the assistant replied. We're offering you $10 million to marry the most powerful man in the Middle East. She laughed, out loud, until the elevator doors opened, and she saw him. Zaid Al-Mahdi, 6'3", sharp jawline, eyes like fire and grief fused together. He didn't smile, he didn't even blink. You'll be my wife for 12 months, he said flatly. You'll sign an NDA. You'll live in my Dubai penthouse. You'll attend public events with me. But you will not speak unless spoken to, and you will never enter my private wing. Amira's lips quivered. What if I say no? He slid a black card across the table. It's already loaded with $500,000. That's your signing bonus. By 11:59 p.m., they were married. In a private room, in front of a government official on standby. No flowers, no kiss, no emotion. She was dressed in her dusty wrapper and a borrowed veil. He wore a Rolex worth more than the entire slum she came from. Just like that, the street girl became the wife of a billionaire. But Amira didn't know yet. This contract marriage would become the most dangerous and passionate chapter of her life. Because behind Zaid's icy silence was a man hiding secrets, a dead wife's unfinished business, and an ex-lover who would kill to keep Amira from touching his heart. She stepped into a palace of gold, but every mirror whispered she didn't belong. And just when she thought fake love was her only danger, his dead wife's secrets came crawling out from the walls. Amira had never seen marble floors so shiny they reflected the soul. The Al-Mahdi Palace in Dubai wasn't just wealth, it was power made visible. Crystal chandeliers bigger than her old apartment, staff who wouldn't look her in the eye, and a silence so thick, even her footsteps sounded like lies. The moment they arrived, the rules came hard and fast. No eye contact with Zaid unless he speaks first. No entering his West Wing. No questions about his past. No, no, no. To them, she wasn't a wife. She was a placeholder in heels. Zaid, meanwhile, vanished into his world of silent business calls, boardroom wars, and a locked bedroom door. He spoke to her only when absolutely necessary. At public events, they played the happy couple, his hand loosely around her waist, his smile faked to perfection. But behind the scenes? Nothing. No warmth, no affection. Until the night of the gala. She was forced into a custom emerald gown that hugged her like betrayal, her face done up by professionals who whispered behind her back. At the event, Amira stood beside Zaid, dazzling under chandeliers, yet alone in a crowd of people sipping champagne worth more than her whole village. Then she saw her. Tall, blonde, high cheekbones and hate in her eyes. Lana El-Rashid, Zaid's ex-fiancée, and the woman everyone thought he would marry after his wife died. She floated over like venom on silk. You must be the new charity case, Lana said with a fake smile. Tell me, darling, did you learn to curtsy before or after you left the orphanage? Amira smiled sweetly. No orphanage, just the streets. You should visit sometime, might toughen your skin. Lana's lips twitched, but before she could strike back, Zaid interrupted. Lana, this is my wife. And unlike you, she knows when to leave the past buried. He wrapped his arm around Amira's waist. Firm, protective. It was the first time he touched her with intention, and her heart betrayed her with a flutter. That night, after the gala, he didn't vanish to the West Wing. He sat beside her in the lounge, poured her tea himself, and said something that made her forget the rules. You didn't have to defend me. She looked up. I wasn't defending you, I was defending myself. A small smile tugged at his lips, like his heart had forgotten how to do it but was trying again. You surprise me, he said quietly. I get that a lot. But before the moment could grow into something real, a housekeeper came running into the room, face pale. Sir, the security vault? Someone's opened your late wife's archive room. Zaid turned cold instantly. He stormed out, with Amira on his heels. In a hidden hallway, they found the door to the West Wing, ajar. Inside, chaos. Bookshelves overturned, glass broken, and on the floor, a photograph. Zaid picked it up. It was a photo of his wife, and a baby. But not his baby. The date on the photo? 2 months after her supposed death. Zaid staggered back like he'd been shot. Amira whispered, Zaid, did your wife fake her death? He said nothing, because even he didn't know the answer anymore. The dead don't come back, unless they were never dead to begin with. And now, the fake wife must stand face to face with the real one, who wants her husband, her crown, and maybe even her life. Zaid hadn't slept in 2 days. The photo they found in the wrecked West Wing wasn't just a memory, it was evidence. Dated, time-stamped. His wife, Layla, was smiling. Alive, holding a child, but Layla had died in an explosion on the Syria border. Her body was recovered, or so he thought. The next day, a letter arrived at the palace. No return address, just a gold seal, his wife's seal. You replaced me like a broken doll, Zaid. But I was never broken. I was buried alive, and now, I'm digging my way back to what's mine. He crumpled the paper with shaking hands. Amira read it over his shoulder, her skin crawling. She had signed up for a contract marriage, a fake life, a borrowed title, not a love triangle with a ghost. Zaid snapped into action. Security, surveillance, background checks. And that night, she appeared. Layla, alive, in the palace gates, dressed in all black, flanked by 2 lawyers and a small child. Zaid stared at her like he was hallucinating. Is it really you? He whispered. She smirked. You didn't expect me to stay dead forever, did you? Amira stepped back as Layla entered the foyer. The woman was stunning, but there was something hollow in her eyes. Something cruel. Then came the bombshell. This is my son, Layla said coldly. Your real heir. Zaid stared at the boy. Same eyes, same jawline, but no memory. Layla had vanished before this child was ever mentioned. You faked your death? He finally asked. I escaped. You think your enemies only wanted me dead? I protected our son by disappearing. And now that your fake wife warmed your bed, I thought it was safe to return. Amira's blood froze. Layla turned to her. You're the girl from the gutter, right? The one he paid to play queen? Zaid interrupted. Layla, don't. No, Amira said firmly. Let her speak. I want to hear what the walking ghost thinks I am. Layla stepped closer. You're nothing but a street girl in a stolen crown. But don't worry, sweetheart. You won't be here long. Zaid is my husband. That paper you signed? Void. Our marriage was never annulled. Boom. Amira's chest tightened. She looked at Zaid. Is it true? Zaid hesitated. The silence said everything. Yes, Layla whispered with victory in her voice. Which means I am the legal wife. And you are just the temporary maid. Amira felt like the ground was shifting. The staff began whispering. The media was already buzzing. The palace had 2 queens, and the throne wasn't big enough for both. That night, Zaid came to Amira's room for the first time unannounced. I didn't know she was alive. I swear it, he said. But I need time to fix this. Amira blinked through tears she refused to shed. You need time to choose, she corrected. He said nothing, so she packed her bags. And before sunrise, the street girl who had become a billionaire's wife walked out of the palace gates, again barefoot. But this time, she wasn't going back to poverty. Because what Zaid didn't know, what no one knew, was that Amira had a secret of her own. She was pregnant, with his child, and the next battle wasn't about love anymore, it was about legacy. One carries his blood, the other claims his ring. And in the billionaire's kingdom, only one woman will wear the crown and survive. 4 months later, Dubai's skyline glittered like diamonds, but war brewed behind the palace walls. Amira had vanished without a trace after walking out barefoot. No calls, no texts, no scandalous interviews. Zaid searched, discreetly, endlessly, but found nothing. Until a single photo leaked to the press. Amira, now glowing, radiant, and visibly pregnant, stepping out of a private clinic in Accra, Ghana. Zaid nearly dropped his phone. It was his child, there was no question. His lawyers did the math. The timeline fit. But now, Amira wasn't just the poor girl he married to save his empire. She was the mother of his unborn heir. And that changed everything. The news hit Layla like a dagger. Another heir? She hissed, slamming a crystal vase against the marble. He's mine. This empire is mine. My son is the rightful legacy. But Zaid, cold, calculated, and still haunted, made a decision. I'm bringing Amira back. She's carrying my blood. She belongs in the palace. Layla laughed darkly. She leaves with that baby, she becomes a billionaire on her own. You think she'll hand it over? She's playing you. But Zaid was already boarding his private jet. In Accra, Amira was living quietly in a luxury apartment gifted by an anonymous donor, Zaid's silent protection. She had changed, no longer just a poor girl in borrowed heels, she now stood with her chin high, her belly round, and her eyes sharper than ever. When Zaid walked in, she didn't flinch. I told you I needed time, he said gently. I didn't know it would mean losing you. I didn't leave because of Layla, she replied. I left because you didn't choose me. I'm choosing you now, he said softly, his hand brushing her stomach. The baby kicked. A sign, a spark, a second chance. But back in Dubai, Layla wasn't waiting. She filed an emergency petition in court to block Amira from returning to the palace. Her claim? That child threatens the future of my son. I demand a paternity test and an injunction until it's proven. But the test? 100% match. Zaid was the father. And then, the twist no one saw coming. Amira's late father, long thought to be a homeless drunk in Lagos, was discovered to be a hidden tribal king, assassinated for his anti-corruption stance decades ago. Her bloodline? Royal. Lost royalty. She wasn't just a street girl anymore. She was a queen in her own right. Now, the media was ablaze. Arab billionaire's wife versus street girl turned queen. 2 babies, 1 fortune, 0 mercy. Zaid stood at the center of a storm. A legal wife with a child and a vendetta. A former contract bride with his unborn heir and a secret crown. And an empire hanging by a thread. In a bold move, Amira returned to Dubai, not to beg, not to hide, but to attend the board of directors gala where Zaid was to name his official heir. Dressed in gold, belly round, posture regal, Amira entered the ballroom as cameras flashed and jaws dropped. Layla gasped when she saw her. You don't belong here, she spat. But Amira smiled coolly. That's where you're wrong. I never belonged on the street. And now, I'm here to take my rightful place. The room fell silent. Zaid stepped to the podium. And with every reporter, board member, and royal watcher holding their breath, he said, I once married Amira to save my company. But today, I choose her, to save me. And I name her child my successor, my heir, my legacy, my son. Gasps, cameras, chaos. But the biggest twist? Layla wasn't done yet. As the night ended, she whispered to her lawyer, if I can't have the empire, I'll destroy the heir. A fake marriage became a royal love story. But now, with assassins at the gates and betrayal inside the palace walls, only one queen will survive the night. 3 nights after the gala, the palace was in lockdown. Armed guards patrolled the marble corridors. Zaid doubled security, not for himself, but for Amira and the unborn child. Layla had disappeared, vanished with her son in the dead of night. No goodbye, no threats, just silence. But everyone knew silence was deadlier than war. Amira tried to find peace. She spent her days reading to her bump in the garden and pretending the walls weren't closing in. Zaid tried to stay close, present, but guilt lingered like perfume. He had once chosen Layla, then Amira. Now he feared he might lose them both. Then came the bomb under the Bentley. One of Zaid's top guards noticed the wire before ignition. They defused it in time, but barely. The message was clear. This is no longer a love story. It's a war for the heir. Amira was rushed into hiding. Zaid sent her to a private island under his family's trust, guarded by ex-military commandos. But even there, whispers followed her. Servants who stared too long. Shadows behind glass. Drones in the sky. She wasn't safe, not even from the people who swore to protect her. And then, betrayal struck from the inside. Fatima, her most trusted maid, the same one who bathed her during her sickness and held her hair back during morning sickness, was caught drugging her tea. The plan? Induce early labor, kill the child during delivery, make it look like nature had done the job. Amira collapsed in shock, and when the truth unraveled, it was worse than imagined. Fatima wasn't a maid, she was Layla's cousin, planted months ago, paid in gold to bring down the woman who dared steal the crown. Zayd arrived on the island by helicopter the moment he heard. He rushed into the room. Amira, pale, shaking, but unbroken, looked up at him. "I was almost fooled," she whispered, eyes glassy. "I was almost gone." Zayd dropped to his knees beside her. "I failed you once. I will never fail you again." Tears streamed down her face. But not from fear, from the pain, because at that exact moment, her water broke. The baby was coming. The storm outside the island roared as medics rushed in. The winds howled, thunder cracked, and inside a candle-lit room, a former street girl, now crowned queen, gave birth to a son. Screams, pushes, tears, and then, silence. A cry, a life, a miracle. Zayd held his son in trembling arms. Amira, exhausted but alive, looked at the boy like he was the beginning and end of her story. "We'll name him Malik," she whispered, "because he will be king." But even as the new heir took his first breath, Layla was preparing her final move. She had one more card to play. One last betrayal, and this time, it wasn't just aimed at Amira. It was aimed at Zayd. One woman holds his heart, the other holds his secrets. And when truth meets vengeance, the crown will fall, but who will still be standing to wear it? 3 days after Malik's birth, peace seemed possible, for the first time in months. Zayd held his son close, marveling at the life he and Amira had created. Amira, wounded but healing, glowed with quiet strength. The palace was quiet, the media was obsessed with the new queen of the desert. And Layla? Still missing, but something didn't feel right. Zayd knew Layla too well. Silence was never her weapon, it was her trap. Then, it happened. A package arrived at the palace gates. No name, no address, just a black envelope sealed with crimson wax. Inside, a video. Zayd's hands trembled as he pressed play. It was grainy footage, security camera, old, but the voices were clear. Layla, talking to a man, a doctor, a fertility doctor. "Yes," she said coldly. "I want the embryo implanted. But change the records. If Zayd ever finds out I used his sperm without his consent, it'll ruin everything." The date? 1 year before the explosion. The child she claimed was Zayd's heir? Wasn't even his. It was stolen. She had lied about the child, her death, her reasons, her loyalty, everything. Zayd felt his soul freeze. She'd faked her death, yes. But worse, she'd faked her own child's bloodline. And then, the second file loaded. This time, it wasn't Layla. It was his own brother, Karim, once thought dead, now revealed to be living under a false name in Istanbul, confessing under duress that Layla and Zayd's late mother's accidental overdose wasn't so accidental. It was Layla. She poisoned the tea. She needed the mother out of the way to push the marriage forward. Zayd sank to his knees. It wasn't just betrayal, it was treason, murder. He stormed into the courtroom 2 days later with armed guards, baby Malik in his arms, Amira behind him, and the video as evidence. Layla was dragged into court, hands cuffed, eyes blazing, lips curled in defiance. "Is it true?" the judge demanded. She didn't flinch. "I built your empire, Zayd. And I destroyed anyone who stood in the way. Including your mother. Including her." She pointed at Amira. "Because love doesn't build empires. Power does." Zayd's face was stone. "Then you'll rot in a prison of your own making." She lunged at him, feral, screaming, but the guards held her back. And just like that, it was over. Layla was sentenced to life in a private asylum, far from Dubai's lights. Her fake child was placed under guardianship. Her empire? Gone. And Amira, the street girl who once begged for bread, became the official queen consort of the Al Hassan Empire. The people cheered her name. The media worshipped her image. And baby Malik? Declared, the desert rose, heir to a dynasty that had nearly been poisoned by lies. In their private garden, days later, Amira looked at Zayd and whispered, "Do you still wish you hadn't met me?" Zayd cupped her face, tears glistening in his eyes. "Meeting you didn't just save my empire. It saved me." And as the sun set over Dubai, the crown finally rested, not on the head of the woman born to royalty, but on the heart of the woman who earned it through fire, betrayal, and love. Because sometimes, the girl from the street doesn't just marry the king. She becomes the legend they never saw coming.